Today we're talking about the great matcha shortage that we're seeing not only in Japan, we're feeling the repercussions all over the globe. Welcome to the Japanese Tea Pedia. This is Yuki from Tealife, and here we talk about Japanese tea and we provide you content that you can't find anywhere else. So today I felt like we want to talk about this huge global matcha shortage that we're seeing, and there's two reasons I was compelled to pick up this as a topic. One was because it was getting so much publicity these days. I've been receiving lots of interview requests from lots of different media, local media. So it started with the Channel News Asia, Straits Times, the Lianhe Zaobao. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's a local Chinese newspaper. I think it's the biggest Chinese newspaper in Singapore. And then also I was joining in 2 radio shows as well. So lots of interest, and these were all fun to be a part of, but I just didn't have enough time to kind of really be able to articulate everything I wanted to go through. The second reason is because I felt that it's important for us to explain our current situation to our customers, because we've been out of stock for many of our matchas for a very long time. And this is obviously not an ideal situation, and we've been asking a lot of patience for our customers. So I felt it's important, almost an obligation, to explain this current state to you. So those are the 2 reasons. So this video is dedicated to our customers who are profoundly impacted by this current situation, and whoever else is very interested about the state of global matcha supply. So this is how I'm going to do this today. I have been asked lots of the same questions from many media. So I'm going to go through the most common questions one by one in this video. So let's start with the first question. Why is there a global matcha shortage? So matcha itself has been increasing popularity gradually for a while now. So I've been talking to a few of our matcha producers recently, about 10 or actually 11 of them this past month plus. So I've been doing lots of communications, and they kind of say a very similar thing. In terms of popularity, it's actually been increasing for a long time, maybe more than 3 years, gradually. But then it made this huge sudden spike perhaps around early this year, maybe around February or so. And this huge spike, it was global, but the main culprit, if you will, is actually from the US. There's been a huge matcha explosion in US, and then the US market started to buy all these Japanese matchas. So that's how it started. And then from the supply side, we didn't really feel the effects until perhaps around July or August, around summer. And that's when we suddenly started to feel the impact to the supply. And that's why currently it's a huge global crisis. Now, I actually didn't really know why this explosion of matcha popularity happened until quite recently. I actually met this customer who kind of came by from the US, and we were talking about this a little bit. It turns out to be that it's TikTok who's really kind of ignited this matcha spark. So social media really ignited this spark, especially around the Marukyu Koyamaen matcha, which is obviously the one that we carry. And then suddenly this huge popularity increase happened. But I think what it just did was it kind of highlighted the natural characteristics of matcha, which is it's an extremely healthy food. It's extremely delicious as well. And also it's something that's visually appealing as well. So it's a very beautiful, vibrant green color. And if you mix it with water, it makes a very beautiful drink. If you mix it with latte, if you make layers, it makes it even more aesthetically pleasing. It fits well with this, very, very recent social media movement as well. So it looks good in Instagram, it looks good in TikTok, and that's why we're seeing these social media platforms really kind of pulling this explosion of popularity of matcha. So that's how it looks. So when the demand of any product goes up, you also hope that the supply side of the matcha will go up as well. Unfortunately for matcha, this is very difficult. The supply side elasticity of matcha is not as high as we hope it would be. So it requires lots of investment, and it requires lots of time in order to really expand the ability to produce more matcha, especially the quality matcha. So the demand going up, the supply really not improving that much, and that's why we're seeing a huge shortage in supply these days. So that's kind of the answer to the first question, which is why is there a global matcha shortage? Okay, so let's go on to the second question. How is this impacting businesses? So obviously it's been having a huge impact to several businesses in this ecosystem. So first of all, if you go to Japan, to a very famous tea house, to very famous matcha producers, they've been restricting sales of matcha to customers. So if you walk in, you can probably only buy one matcha per customer per day, something like that. It's been very difficult to buy lots of matcha. From a distributor's perspective, we may have been impacted even more because previously we were able to procure lots of more matcha. Right now it's been extremely restricted in terms of quantity, but not just quantity, also the timeline required to order matcha. So I've been talking to some of the radio shows. I've been saying that perhaps in the month of November, compared to the previous month, our amount of matcha declined by about 60%. So it's declined to 40% compared to the previous month. And December at this pace is going to decline even further. And that's really bad news, especially because we're going into this Christmas season. Now, we're still the fortunate ones because we still have stock incoming due to the established relationships that we had. But like new distributors, they're being cut off, and it's very hard to establish new relationships with new producers these days. So from a distributor's perspective, I think it's been a very brutal situation. Now, this matcha craze, it started in the Uji matcha area brand. I'll talk about area brands perhaps in a different video, but especially the Uji matcha, which is in the Kyoto region, has been extremely popular. That's where it started, but then it kind of trickled off. And right now, matcha from all over Japan are basically out of stock, especially for the high quality matcha. So whether it be from Nishio, Yame, Kagoshima, lots of areas, they're kind of running out of matcha. And not only that, this impact is moving on from like the really famous top tier brands, like again, Marukyu Koyamaen or Ippodo, which are the ones that we carry, to even to the less famous brands as well. So even for the less famous brands, we're starting to see restrictions in terms of sales and lack of supply. So again, very profound business impact. Now, from Japan's perspective, this is a huge problem. This matcha shortage is a huge problem. And this is because matcha is not just an ordinary drink. It's a part of their culture. They have a tea ceremony culture, and it's a very big tradition. And that's something that as Japan, you have to really protect. So when you run out of quality matcha, you suddenly can't do this tea ceremony anymore. And that's going to be a huge problem. So when it comes to where do we allocate the remaining stock of tea to, it inevitably becomes the domestic market in Japan, because that's where you want to protect. The Japanese tea culture is the utmost priority for these matcha producers. Now, this tea ceremony culture in Japan, I think it's important to talk about the type of tea that they use. So what they use is they use the top tier quality matcha for their tea ceremony. And that's kind of obvious because tea ceremony, they don't serve lattes. They serve it in pure matcha form. So they just whisk it with hot water and they serve it that way. And that's a very pure form of matcha that requires a very high quality tea, or else it's going to be very disgusting. And the other part of the tea ceremony is that you're supposed to serve your visitors with hospitality, and the tea is a part of it. So you don't want to be serving disgusting tea either. So it kind of mandates a really good quality matcha, preferably branded matcha, because that's part of the hospitality in a tea ceremony. So what that means is that what they protect in Japan the most is those famous top tier ceremonial grade matchas, which taste delicious. So those are the tiers that the matcha producers will try to kind of safeguard for the Japanese domestic market. And that's why we're seeing less and less of these being sold to whether it be individuals in Japan in retail shops or being sent out to distributors outside of Japan, which is the reason why it's really impacting companies like us. What that also means is that not all grades of matcha are equally impacted. If you're talking about the middle tier of matcha or lower tier of matcha, you can still find stock in abundance. Their demand has gone up as well, so maybe there has been a little bit of a strain on the supply chain, but nonetheless, you don't see any sales restrictions for any of these. So that's the good news in a sense. So that's why in many cases, if you're drinking like local brands, Japanese matcha, but they're produced by like local producers, local companies, that local brands, if you will. So these are companies that usually use the middle quality or the lower quality matchas, so they're not really impacted. And would that be a problem for the quality of matcha you drink? Well, that kind of depends, right? So if you're going to drink in like pure matcha form, you really want the tippy top of the quality matcha. In that case, yes, you are impacted because you can't really access the really great fine quality matcha anymore. However, if you're drinking latte, if you're mixing with different types of milk, if you're mixing with sugar even, then in that case, and I'm not saying this is a bad way to drink it, I think it's also a great way of enjoying matcha as well. In that case, the taste is not going to be, it's not going to be that different. So you won't really feel the impact of this supply issue at all. Now, if you pull this conversation back to Tealife again, which is our tea shop in Singapore, now we are extremely impacted because the matcha that we carry are really the tippy top of the mountain. So Marukyu Koyamaen and Ippodo matcha, these are honestly in a totally different stratosphere in terms of the quality of matcha. They're really good. And you really don't need sophisticated taste buds to really be able to tell the difference between a Marukyu Koyamaen matcha and like a middle tier or a lower tier matcha. It's just you taste the matcha powder directly, and it's either super delicious or very disgusting. It's just really easy to tell. And these are the ones that are severely impacted due to this matcha scarcity. So that brings us to the third question, which is how has this situation impacted Tealife's business? Now, this is a question that's kind of hard to answer because it's honestly been impacting us profoundly. It's really no way around it, but a big portion of our revenue is matcha, the high quality matcha, the branded matcha from Marukyu Koyamaen and Ippodo. And that part of the revenue has been unfortunately dwindled. So there has been a huge economic impact in that sense. Now, how I like to think about this is a long-term positive and a short-term chaos. That's how I like to think about it. So long-term positive because this trend of matcha, I think it's a really good thing. It's a good thing that everyone's starting to know about matcha, know about the health benefits, the taste of matcha. And I hope this increase in demand, I think it sticks. I hope it sticks. And if it sticks for the long run, it's really good for this whole, Japanese tea ecosystem. But from a short-term perspective, I say it's chaos because, well, if we have stock, it flies from the shelves. However, if we don't have stock, our revenue basically stops. So once it's this back and forth of when we get stock, we have business. When we don't have stock, we don't have business. And in that sense, it's been a little bit chaotic. But honestly speaking, I think the biggest impact has been towards our customers who are looking forward to the quality tea that we carry. And this is very difficult because there are really no alternatives to this high quality tea, high quality matcha. So unfortunately, we have to seek the customer's understanding and patience at this moment, which is probably the most difficult part about operating our business these days. The next question is, okay, there's tons of healthy drinks that has lots of antioxidants. Why is matcha so popular? Okay, so I touched on this a little bit in the first question, but I think there's 4 reasons that makes matcha very popular. Now, first of all, it's the taste. And I think it's a very distinct taste that you can't get from anything else. And I think it's amazingly delicious. So that's the first reason. I could be biased on that because I love matcha, but I think that's a big reason. Number 2 is because of its antioxidants. Its sheer strength of antioxidants is immensely powerful, and it's been known to be one of the most potent antioxidant drinks in the world. And when you look at, like, if you go to like a Watson's or or I mean, a drugstore. If you go to a drugstore, you can find EGCG supplements. And what those are, these are substances that are called green tea catechins, which are in green tea that kind of drive these antioxidant effects. And they're supplements because that's how powerful they are. That proves how strong of a health benefit Japanese tea carries. So this is not just matcha, this is Japanese tea in general, including like sencha and tamarukcha and things like that. The third reason, now it's very similar to health benefits, but it has tangible effects to reducing risks of certain diseases. And it's not just a few, it's a lot of diseases that actually impacts. So I've been doing lots of research on what kind of diseases do Japanese green tea actually impact. And I'm kind of focusing on like not just lab results or not hypotheticals. I'm really looking at studies that kind of do human-based studies to really see if they really have tangible effects. And from the result of those studies, there's lots of diseases that it has positive impact too. And this includes things like so heart diseases, diabetes, certain types of cancers, stroke, COPD, Alzheimer's, diabetes, did I say diabetes? But not just that, but improving the immune system and preventing cavities, and the list really goes on and on. It's a really strong, robust list of diseases that green tea can help positively impact. So there's this actual positive impact to certain diseases that Japanese green tea, including matcha, can provide, and that's the third reason why I think it's very popular. So the fourth reason, and this is something I've been thinking about recently these days, is the color. And it really looks good because it's a beautiful green. It's not just a normal dull green. It's a beautiful vibrant green, which when you mix it in like a latte with white milk, and then you also add like a strawberry powder which is pink, or blueberry powder which is blue, or chocolate which is brown, it makes this beautiful art, if you will, in this see-through glass. And I think that's extremely TikTokable. It's extremely Instagrammable. It fits well with the social media culture that we're kind of seeing these days, and that's why it's been a very strong driver of this growth of popularity in matcha. So those four reasons I think are the key reasons that matcha has been popular. So next question is, how long do you think the matcha crisis will last? Okay, so this is a very challenging question to answer as well. I think that there's not going to be a short-term fix for this. It's not like after the next harvesting season, all the matcha supply is going to be back. And the reason I say this is because there's so many choke points in the supply chain of matcha, and it really takes a long time to develop this supply chain. So for example, when we talk about the tea farms in Japan are reducing. So the number of tea farms in the total area mass of the tea farms are all decreasing. Also, the tea farming labor, they're aging as well. So it's not like you're getting manpower to operate these farms either. And these are very difficult issues to try to kind of solve short term, let alone long term as well. Now, it is possible for certain tea leaf farms to switch from, for example, like a gyokuro farm to a matcha farm so you can produce a little bit more matcha. However, that's not necessarily easy either, and it might take a few years depending on the tea farm situation, and you require skill as well. So again, it's not really easy to do, and even if you're able to do that, matcha again takes lots of time. So you have to plant the leaves, you have to wait for the leaves to grow for a few years. Once you're able to harvest them, then you can harvest, but then you have to for quality matcha, you have to store them for a while to enhance the taste as well. So by the time the new matcha from expanding the supply chain comes out, it'll be a few years, is how I think about this. I do think there will be a lot of effort in increasing the capacity of matcha being built next year. So I think there will be a growth in the supply compared to this year for sure. But is it going to be large enough to compensate for the growth in the demand side? I don't think it's really going to happen that way. That's how I see it. I hope I'm wrong, but that's how I see it. So before we go into the last question, I'd like to thank you for watching this video up to this point. I hope you can like and subscribe if you like this video. As always, again, we try to get content that you won't be able to find anywhere else, and I hope that this information is all new to you. So the last question is, given that there's a shortage in matcha, is there any alternative drinks that you recommend? Okay, so this is very tough because matcha, again, it has such a unique taste that you can't really replace this. So, that's that. If you're looking for the taste, you can't really replace. But in terms of the health benefits, there's actually alternatives that I think are feasible. And these are loose leaf teas. So these are teas such as sencha or tamaryokcha. These are loose leaf Japanese green tea that actually looks green as well. And why this is important is because they're kind of made in a very similar way to matcha, where after they harvest, to stop the oxidation of these leaves, they steam it. And by steaming it, rather than whether it be baking or roasting or things like that, by steaming them, they're able to preserve the nutrients in their most natural form. So that's why they're such a beautiful green. Even the loose leaf teas are beautiful green. That's why matcha is also a very beautiful green. And that's why they're able to carry forward the health benefits that green tea kind of naturally possesses. So even if it's a loose leaf tea, you get the same nutrients that you would get in a matcha. Now you might be thinking that, but matcha, because you ground it and you directly consume it, that must be richer than a loose leaf tea. Now that's correct, you're right about that. However, there's two issues with matcha actually, and I would actually argue that you can get more antioxidants on a daily basis if you go for loose leaf tea. The problem with matcha is because it's such a strong tea, you can probably only drink one serving, and that's all. The thing about loose leaf tea is you can actually drink several infusions or several cups of loose leaf tea, and that can kind of increase the amount of nutrients that you can absorb. The other thing is actually matcha, they're shaded before they're being harvested, and what that does is the shading of the tea leaves actually makes the tea better, it tastes better. However, it reduces the antioxidant effects, which is kind of something I think you haven't really expected, but I'll talk about this a little bit more in detail in a different video. But basically, by shading the tea leaves from the sun, it reduces the health benefits. And the loose leaf teas such as sencha and tamaryokcha, they don't shade the tea leaves as much. So they preserve those healthy compounds in the teas as much as possible. So for example, we have a normal matcha would probably have like 100 to 150 milligrams of catechin, which is the green tea catechin, which is the antioxidant nutrients in the tea per cup, something like that, 100 to 150. And a normal glass of sencha would have a lot less, but we do have a tea called an EGCG green tea, which is a type of tamaryokcha, which we kind of chose to specifically increase the amount of naturally occurring EGCG in the loose leaf tea. And for this tea, the first infusion, you can actually get 240 milligrams of green tea catechins, which is a lot. And then the second infusion will bring that number up to 360 milligrams, which is very, very strong. So basically what I'm saying is it doesn't have to be matcha. Matcha is also very good, but you can also get these health benefits from loose leaf teas such as sencha and tamaryokcha as well. All right, so thank you for watching. Those were a few questions that I've been asked a lot these days. I hope the video is not too long, but if you have been watching through the whole video, thank you again, and I'll see you in the next video.